Welcome to the WealthStack Podcast. I'm your host, Shannon Rosic, the Director of WealthStack Content Solutions. I'm joined by David Crow, Head of Axos Clearing at Axos. And today's topic, we are exploring how technology is transforming wealth management and enabling firms to deliver personalized, client-centric solutions. David, thanks so much for joining me. We're finally making it happen.
Yeah. Hey, Shannon. Thanks so much. I'm happy to be here. Really excited to be visiting with you. It's good to see you again.
You too. So I'm going to ask you the hardest question you'll get this entire podcast, which is about your background. So I would love to hear more about what makes David, both on a professional and personal front.
Awesome. Great question. I think maybe I would just sort of hit the rewind button and maybe start with the personal, because really what makes David David in the workplace is really what makes David David in the personal and sort of how I got here, which is literally a product of my parents, right? Like most of us. I am a Midwest guy and lived in the Midwest most of my life, which between that and the fact that my parents, stayed together their entire lives. Unfortunately, they're both gone now, but they stayed together their entire lives, and they had a sort of set of values and a set of morals that they lived by. And I would say, Shannon, that's really, that upbringing is really kind of what made me who I am. Specifically, they prioritized people over money. They prioritized curiosity over being right. And they just sort of treated people well. And I think it's sort of that which I've brought with me into the workforce, and really I try to bring it in my daily life. Maybe closer to home from a work standpoint, I've had a lot of great mentors, and I've really tried to embody that and pay it forward a little bit. And I really believe that if we can, treat each other well, we're going to accomplish a lot together. So sort of work hard, play hard, be in the moment. That's kind of who David is.
I love that. Your parents sound absolutely wonderful. I'm still trying to explain to my parents what I actually do for my job. So
yeah, I hear that too.
That's great. And then, just walk us through professionally too, just how you ultimately got here and landed as obviously the head of Axos Clearing.
This is really my fourth, job or role out of college, which was, a million years ago now, but started in medical sales, got great training on selling and navigational skills, and literally and figuratively. And that was actually really, really endearing. I think really fondly of those days. Then I actually came into the family business, which was also sales marketing related. And when I had sort of decided that I was ready for the next chapter in my life, I actually met a gentleman whose role I ultimately took on. You'll appreciate this. I have two girls, one of which we had at the time. She was a 3-year-old girl. My wife and I met he and his wife and their granddaughter at a Sesame Street Live concert. I kid you not. And so it was that meeting that ultimately led to me joining the first firm that I was in wealth management. I was there for 25 years. I tell that story a little bit just because I think that sort of relationships is really where it's at. I know we're going to talk a little bit about AI. We're going to talk about some other technology things, but the reality, Shannon, is, as we all know, it's all about relationships and somehow, using technology to enrich those relationships, but still it's about driving the relationship. So then that was about a 25-year career. And I was looking for an alternative and got a hold of Greg over at Axos Bank, Axos Financial, who was looking for a new leader in the space. And I thought, it's a really great opportunity to take a business with great bones, great foundation, and really harness that sort of innovative value point that the broader company has. Maybe we'll talk for a minute about that over the call here, and bring it into a business that, in the market that we're in, can be a little staid, to really drive that kind of innovation and technology forward approach to it. So that's about a year and a quarter ago, and we've been fairly busy. We're having a blast, but it's been a lot of fun.
Well, you are certainly the first guest to make parallels between Sesame Street and your professional career.
Yeah. I mean, look, you got to tell it like it is, right?
But you're absolutely right. I mean, I've also been very fortunate in my career that, a lot of my roles have been tailored to my skill set, and it's all through the people I know. I don't remember really the last time I had a formal interview. It's just all who you know, what their needs are. And if it clicks, it clicks. And it's usually kind of like dating. It's when you kind of least expect it, you find your person.
Yeah.
So I completely agree with that. And just quickly before we get into our first segment, if you wouldn't mind just giving a high level and brief overview of Axos, who you serve, target audiences, and where you sit in the ecosystem.
Sure. So in my business, Axos Clearing, we're obviously clearing custodial partner for financial institutions, broker-dealers, hybrid registered investment advisors. We are really transforming the business, but to serve hybrid wealth firms, right? So broker-dealer, corporate RIA firms who are, I would say looking for something different in the space. And by something different, that could to them mean a higher service quotient, a higher sort of center of excellence around how we deliver that experience. A full, rich set of financial solutions, but really that's the primary market, right? So we're trying to leverage the continued move towards advice. I know we'll touch on that just a little bit, and how do we meaningfully combine that with technology and a full suite of capabilities to serve investors and advisors better. I think there's an opportunity to continue to do it better, and that's what we've set out to try to do here.
Love it. Well, I appreciate the background, the context. So like I said, let's dive into our first segment that I call Stats All, folks. Again, Looney Tunes reference for those. We've covered now Looney Tunes and Sesame Street. So we're off to a good start here. But according to a study by Forbes, 82% of professionals believe wealth managers who adopt hyper-personalization are more likely to succeed than those who don't. And as we know, personalization in wealth management has become a very hot topic as those client expectations continue to evolve and they expect the Amazon Netflix experience. Mm-hmm. So how is Axos addressing this trend?
Yeah, so in my business, you're going to hear the refrain "Axos Complete" a fair amount. So I might as well throw it out here. And Axos Complete really, Shannon, is kind of a moniker to help frame both the entire ecosystem of how you experience Axos. And to kind of break it down, it's obviously the technology elements, right? So we're about a month and a half away from launching our new professional workstation. So that's for all the professionals. We'll have an investor portal that kind of, leverages the same infrastructure, but of course is for the end investor. And then we have a really robust middleware that drives workflows, rules engines, and configuration, which is part of that personalization that you spoke of for firms and for advisors. But that's also combined with a robust sort of set of capabilities, product services. One of them is the meaningful combination of our banking product, which is a pretty rare thing since we're owned by Axos Financial, Axos Bank. We're going to bring that banking product right alongside the securities product and deliver it through advisors to end consumers. And through that experience, as the investor, just probably like in your bank account, you can aggregate outside assets, right? And so that's a great point of value for the end investor. But beyond that, the data and the insights that come from that information and that aggregation is available, if the investor chooses for it, to their advisor. And that data then becomes a rich body of insights and intelligence to be able to help create a richer wealth management offering. Financial planning is elevated when you have that greater level of fidelity around that information. So we think that that's one of the real key ways. That's how we're really leaning in to driving that personalization. So as an example, Shannon, let's say that you're my client and I'm your advisor. You've linked your accounts through the banking platform, and I happen to notice that your mortgage is maybe a point or a half a point out of line with what current market rates are. I could then at least help you to navigate that environment and say, hey, maybe we can get a bit more competitive mortgage rate interest for you. So that level of personalization that you're talking about is really where we're leaning in. And the great news is, for me, the lift is relatively modest because we've got a very compelling banking offer. The opportunity to pair that with securities, we think is going to be a really cool game changer. So that's just one of those examples. We've got maybe more we'll touch on through the course of this conversation, but that we agree with that trend and we're really trying to lean in.
Yeah, obviously personalization is certainly key. And this is where I like to nerd out is obviously the technology because that's really the engine behind it all, right? So could you maybe share even just at a high level how Axos is approaching things like AI and automation and digital tools that are really starting to transform our industry?
Yeah, we've been an active studier for quite some time. But again, what's interesting about the company is that since we have a very robust direct-to-consumer business, as I mentioned on the bank side, and we have a very robust business-to-business, in the form of the security space, we're leveraging AI in multiple ways. So where it really started in my business was around creating better processes, creating efficiencies. I think that for most people is sort of the obvious installation. We're still studying very hard around the regulatory implications of AI. The other thing we're trying to do is think just a little bit differently about harnessing AI. And what I mean by that is trying to better understand sort of buyer behaviors. And that's, as I rotate back to the consumer side of our business on that banking channel, really understanding what the sort of archetype of a consumer, how they think, how they buy, how they feel about their purchase decisions, right, across the entire lexicon of financial services. And with that, we think we'll be able to better, sort of that's our version of tailoring, I guess, for the end consumer. It's definitely something we're probably Super Bowl this weekend. We're probably in the end of the third quarter on this. So there's a lot more to come. But those are the key places we've sort of started. I think sort of technology will continue to evolve alongside that.
Absolutely. And Axos Clearing announced a partnership with Envestnet, I think it was like back in November, to integrate their managed account technology into Axos Complete. So I want to go back because you mentioned that earlier and talk about that. What sparked that collaboration and what does it ultimately mean for the end clients?
Yeah, I mean, look, everybody knows Envestnet is a high quality, top of the market platform for managed accounts and capabilities. We are trying to strive to really create where clients want to a one-stop shop capability set through our platform. And so while we will be really open architecture where it matters, we also want to be highly connected and have deep layers of integration with key partners. This is an example of that. So being able to do your managed accounts and your brokerage business under one roof, we think there's a ton of value, not just in the sort of single sign-on element of things, but really in terms of business process, right? At the core of the foundation of every managed account, as we know, is what? It's a brokerage account. And so the processes that you have to go through and the efficiencies that you want to pick up in the process of opening an account and managing that account, well, a lot of them are the same. So the notion of bringing that all together was really kind of what drove the partnership with Envestnet. Obviously, Envestnet is a high quality institution. I've been familiar with them for all of my career. So we are really very excited about that. And the idea is to bring that to our existing clients and, of course, help solve more problems for more clients through that partnership.
And you just mentioned that this partnership kind of helps clients move towards that managed account model and the fee-based advisory business. So why do you see this shift as critical for the future of our space?
It's no surprise, right? Broker dealers have had to transform their business models over the course of the last 15 years. That wouldn't be a secret, least of all to you. And through the course of that transformation, they've, of course, gotten more into the world of managed accounts and going towards advisory. Regulations have supported that. Personal preferences of investors, you know all the stats that I do. For me, it's not really sort of, watching the trend. It's really actualizing the trend that continues. And we believe that it will continue to move forward as we go about the next 5, 7, 10 years. The other part of it is we see a continued emergence towards holistic wealth planning. And that's where when you layer in the ability to service brokerage, advisory accounts or relationships, and you layer in that sort of banking aspect of things, that ability to truly operationalize somebody's entire financial life, we think is pretty exciting. And so that's kind of where, again, I said earlier, we're leaning into those trends to try to meet people where they are, but also offer some sort of a 360 view.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what everyone's looking for at the end of the day. I mean, I remember when embedded finance kind of busted on the scene a couple of years ago. And I think that is the hope moving forward, that if you have some type of experience that within an app, that everything is just right there for you. So I'm curious too, especially on the banking side of things, what the response has been from advisors being able to have that accessibility to that type of information. Because as we know, data is a hot 4-letter word right now, and a lot of folks are trying to get their arms around that at their firms. And you're only as good as your worst piece of data in your system. If one thing is off and it can't talk to each other, that makes it very challenging. And so, I've talked to a lot of firms who are really trying to get their data strategies in place, data governance in place, because you can't even start dabbling with AI and things like that and proper workflows if you don't have that data process and data structures in place. So just curious, how you're looking at it from your side of things.
Well, you're 100% right about data hygiene. Just start there. Obviously, that's a major focus of ours as a bank that started only as an internet bank, and we still are today. That's had to have been a focus of ours from the very beginning, right? So data cleanliness, data hygiene, data security, protection, all the things that we speak of in this industry have been part and parcel to how we've started the bank. And so now we're taking and harnessing that and really creating that integration point, and that we're trying to create those meaningful moments or points of value that advisors are actually asking about. So you, at the beginning of your question, you asked a little bit, so like, what's the uptake from advisors? The answer is it's going well. We're still fairly new on the scene with some of this integration. And so I think as we continue to roll out more products with features that are specific to some of those investing clients, we'll see that continue. But stay tuned. We've got about a couple of months or so before we roll out some of the experiences that I think we're going to see people take a real interest in. A lot of the places that we travel with clients and prospects, the interest has been high.
Well, love to hear it. So quick pivot here, because you actually recently partnered with Hive Science on a white paper, and I want to dig into this a little bit. So if you wouldn't mind just giving some context around that and sharing some key findings from it and how it ultimately ties into Axos's approach to technology.
Yeah, this has been really, really interesting. I mean, again, one of the things that I'm really proud of is that, again, we're in an organization that's a large institutional bank, but it's not so large that we sort of take ourselves so seriously that we don't try innovative and creative ways of thinking. And this is a great example of that, Shannon. I think, some of the things, if you followed at all what Hive is doing, are just really, really, different for the financial services business. And so we decided, as you said, to take a whack at that and really, kind of go deep with them. And it was really more, to preface it, it's really been more focused on our consumer bank at the moment. But the outcomes have been really interesting. Really, this was centered around what are the, as I kind of alluded to a little bit earlier, but what are the buying influences? What are the interests of the clients who would be interested, let's say, in the Axos offering versus some other, major banks, online or otherwise? Some of the interesting things that I think we kind of came out with is, our client or the investor who's likely to be interested in our platform is a creative thinker. They tend to be successful in their lives and busy, successful people tend to be plagued by distractions. And so their prioritization of banking, as an example, is around an elegant interface and super easy to use over other features, let's say, that banks tend to focus on. So we found that really, really interesting, how they prioritize things. They tend to be social people, social in that they're comfortable in their business lives, they're comfortable in their personal lives. But they tend, and they're sort of easygoing, but they tend to also seek out sort of that approval, meaning they want to be able to tell people, hey, I just opened this new Axos bank account. So that's sort of an interesting inference for us as we think about cross referrals and branding. And so we're sort of leaning in on that. It's still early days, but we're pretty excited about the information that we've taken there. And in terms of driving our behavior, again, we're just trying to think differently about the investments that we're making in the space and really, really centering around what the most impactful investments will be so that we can come out to the market and know that ideally before we get there, that what we're bringing to market will be leveraged, adopted, and enjoyed by all.
And just for context, for folks that maybe don't know, Hive Science, their platform focuses on, combining social psychology and behavioral science and kind of taking large proprietary data sets and AI and ML to help see your audiences in this kind of holistic light. So you can really understand the demographics, the attitudes, their purchasing processes, and kind of their thought process. So it goes back to that personalization side of things, so you can ultimately better serve them. And no shade to banks, but they haven't always been the most innovative. So it's highly encouraging to hear that Axos is taking that approach and trying to harness the new technologies that are on the scene right now. And so this Hive Science thing is so interesting because, as you've seen, and going back to your first point in this conversation, we're a relationship-based business. And I've always viewed technology as being the co-pilot to obviously ultimately serve your clients. But at the end of the day, it comes down to that relationships and understanding your clients. So being able to access these data points to do that is going to be such a game changer. And it's funny because it feels like other industries have certainly figured this out, and we're starting to really scratch the surface here in wealth management, especially when it comes to AI. But, you look at the retail world, or you're sitting on Instagram and you get served up those personalized ads, and then it starts embedding in your subconscious. And next thing you know, you're buying that random air fryer that you didn't even know you needed. So it's interesting. So that's just something that I'm going to be following closely in financial services. And, there's so many segments that are still underserved. I was talking to our senior tech editor in our first podcast of the year, and we were laughing about this whole idea of democratization, right? We've heard that word for years, but we're still not quite there in this space. And I was saying, I'm still even searching for an advisor that can serve me, because I'm in that fun kind of dink part of my life right now, dual income, no kids, for those of you that don't know. And I've gone through a couple of advisors, but they didn't understand us, and they weren't really willing to go down that path. So to hear something like Axos is really trying to harness that is highly encouraging, because there seems to be there's a lot of still some wood to be cut there.
I think that's right. And I mean, those are some great examples. It is, as I said, it's still a little bit early days, but it is really exciting. And I think what's really exciting, Shannon, is that, to your point, we are taking a different approach at it. We're not just sort of taking the same data, tossing it up against a report writer and coming up with sort of similar outcomes with a slightly different, alternative. We're really trying to think differently about it.
So how do you ultimately drive a culture that ensures that the client is at the forefront of everything that you do? You have a lot going on, but we've certainly pivoted, at least in our industry, to making sure that the client is at the center of everything, a little less product-based. So again, another encouraging shift that we've been seeing.
It really starts with leadership. And I think, for me, it's honestly, it's just persistency, it's intentionality. You have to use the right words. We have to stop meetings in the middle and say, guys, does everybody understand what we're talking about? Can you see all the way through to the end client? We just have to challenge ourselves every single time when we're having a product planning or a technology planning session or a strategic planning session. The reason we're all here, right? Nobody passes go, okay, and collects student dollars if clients are unhappy. So our job is to actually think about clients, and that's how we need to think about development. And we need to do that persistently. We also need to circle back more, right? I think the industry creates things, tosses them out in the marketplace, and doesn't necessarily do that circle back to understand how are we doing. So, we're trying to stand up, robust feedback gathering mechanisms so that we can actually genuinely understand, okay, how are we doing? And if we need to improve, then we actually then need to commit to doing that improvement and change and ideation. So culture is such a tricky word, Shannon, right, as you know, and people love to overuse it. For me, it's really about living and breathing it on a daily basis. And we just have to, as leaders, we have to actually just say the words and pause and make sure that everyone who's charged with bringing those outcomes understands the implications of what we're doing every day. And it's a persistent thing, right? But I'm grateful, because the people that work here kind of already get that, and they really have a high service quotient anyway. So it's more of a slight nudge from time to time than it is a massive transformation or change.
So what else is on the roadmap then for Axos that you can share with us, or at least give us teasers to be looking out for the rest of the year?
Yeah, well, from a technology standpoint, I would say that's probably what you're going to hear most from us for this year. And it really is around that sort of ecosystem of Axos Complete. So stay tuned for the professional workstation. That's going to be super exciting. Stay tuned for the investor portal and that meaningful combination of banking and securities. I think some of the work that we're doing as part of the workstation, go back to your personalization comment, is also creating simple things, but things that are meaningful, like branding. So if you're a broker dealer that is working with Axos Clearing, you'll actually be able to have your brand right on your workstation. Kind of a cool thing, right? Very few firms are doing that in the space. And so we're working through all those gyrations. I think the next wave will be additional partners to connect into the ecosystem. We talked about InvestNet. We just launched an announcement with Future Capital, which is very, very exciting. And you'll see a lot more of that coming, just trying to find ways to add incremental value. So we've been fairly busy, but that's not going to slow down. And so we're pretty excited about it.
All right. And then before we go into our next segment, I have to ask, is there anything that folks should know about Axos that you wish they knew, or anything that you'd like to debunk, or a question that you often get about Axos Clearing?
Yeah, that's great. I would say this, right? When people think about clearing and custody relationships, there's a handful of names that you do know, and you might not think of Axos first. My hope through this conversation and other ones that we're having like this is take a look, because we're really coming out to the market in it with a different perspective and a different point of view and a highly service forward, sort of approach to the marketplace. The bank is extraordinarily sound. Just released earnings a few weeks ago. Quite happy with the progress there. So I'd say there's room in the marketplace for what we're doing, and as I said, we're excited about it. But if you don't know us, come get to know us.
Love it. Well, David, it is time for segment 2 of this episode that I call Ask Us Anything, where I've gone out to the social universe and asked them to submit questions they want answered by you. And we had a few folks slide into the DMs this week. So putting you in the hot seat for a couple questions here if you're ready.
All right, let's do it.
All right, first one. How does Axos approach gathering client feedback during the rollout of new solutions like Axos Complete, for example?
Yeah, well, so existing clients obviously are most critical because they're the ones that are helping us be successful. So we have a bunch of different forums that we use to gather that feedback. We've got day-to-day interactions through the client service team. We've got the relationship management team, who obviously is on a little bit more of a strategic level, asking for feedback. We obviously have a long history with many of these clients, and so part of what we're doing is literally in reaction to that feedback along the way. We have things like advisory boards and client engagement events where we really sit with them, showcase kind of what we're thinking, and then listen, right? You got to just listen. And so part of it is just trying to listen and do what we can. And then part of it, frankly, Shannon, is just being honest about what we can and will and won't do. Because everybody understands in the space of technology, you'll never have enough money or time to do everything that you would love to do. And so you just have to be, logical and responsible about it. But those are the couple of the ways. We do surveys like most firms as well. But I think that hand-to-hand combat is sort of the best way to get the feedback, because you can actually sort of show and tell and then listen and respond. And that's really the approach we've taken. And honestly, the same thing is true with prospective clients, right? So we can get that feedback real time.
Well, like they say, there's a reason we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, right?
Absolutely. My wife tells me that daily.
There you go. All right. No, one more question for you. What's the biggest challenge clearing services and custodians face in today's current environment?
Helping their clients stay relevant and helping stay center of mind with their clients, because many of the services, call it lowercase s, that live underneath custody and clearing are meant to be sort of seen and not heard, right? To use your analogy earlier, meaning they're in the background on purpose. And I understand that intellectually, but the reality is there's so much more that we can do because we see the transaction from front to back, whatever transaction it is. And so our job is to actually come out from behind and help, consult with clients to figure out how to improve. And, I guess my coaching to clients and prospective clients would be, we're here to help, right? Let us see where we can help make improvements, because at the end of the day, a more successful client is also a more successful clearing for a relationship. That they go literally hand in hand.
Love it. Well, I do appreciate you being put on the spot and your very insightful answers. But we've come to our final and my favorite segment that I affectionately call Stack It or Whack It. So be prepared. I'm going to throw out a few technologies, and
Cool.
They're not always WealthTech related, sometimes random thoughts. And you tell me if they are, worth the hype, essentially. So stack it, AKA use it, or whack it, AKA lose it.
Got it.
All right. First one I've got for you. Virtual reality for financial planning meetings. This came on the scene. I remember testing this out, like all the way back in 2016, but I'm not really sure if it ever took off. So I have feelings about it, but would love to know if you would stack or whack VR.
That kind of leans in a little bit with the newer realm of AI as well. I believe that we're in a trust business. We are in a trust business, and that doesn't mean that you wouldn't trust a VR. My general sense is we don't have clients that are running around asking us for it. Candidly, we're not spending a lot of time working on something. So my tendency would be to say, whack it. But that doesn't mean we're not open to it. But clients are going to have to ask us, for some perspective on what we would do to help facilitate that. From my perspective, I think, I personally, I like people, and I think we're in a people business, even though we need to be leveraging technology to be more effective people.
Yeah, it's I'm in a similar camp as you. So, all right, next one. Blockchain technology, when it comes to custody and clearing, stack it or whack it.
Well, I'd like to have a write-in audible, if I may, and I think that is continue to study it actively, because to a large extent, blockchain could be the ultimate enabler for firms like mine at some point, and we still can evolve, and that might be part of our future evolution. It's still, I think, too early to tell. Obviously, we know what it's done for crypto and other technologies and securitization of things. But from my perspective, I think the premise of it is very good. But boy, the level of fidelity information and security around this is what is so critical. We've got to protect people. We're in the business that we're in. If anything, I mentioned trust earlier, and so I'm on a study for that. I don't want to stack it or whack it yet.
That's okay. You're allowed to have You are allowed to have a hybrid answer. That is totally fine. It made me think of it because I'm always curious on folks' takes on blockchain, because you have Elon Musk out here tweeting that we should put all government spending on the blockchain when we still haven't really figured it out yet in practical use cases. So
I'm firmly in the study camp on that.
I can certainly appreciate that. All right. I have a bonus question for you. So even though this episode will come out after the Super Bowl, I have to ask, because I know we're both football fans.
Oh, boy.
Stack or whack a Chiefs three-peat?
Okay, look, this is so hard. I'm modestly annoyed by the success that the Chiefs have had, but I'm more a fan of the Chiefs winning than not in this game. How about that?
I can live with that.
I know that you're a Chiefs fan, and so I wish you the best of success this Sunday. And by the way, I'll be with a whole bunch of very sincere Chiefs fans on Sunday, so I'll be thinking of you, and maybe I'll check in and see how you feel like it's going.
The nerves are certainly settling in, and I feel for everyone, because the poor AFC careened from the Patriots to dynasty, now to the Chiefs dynasty. So I get it, and I feel like it's so typical, especially in our society. We love greatness when we see it up and coming, and everyone loved it when Mahomes won Super Bowl 54. After 50 years of the Chiefs not doing anything, and then everyone loves to tear down greatness. So I get it. I'm trying not to fight everyone on Twitter right now. I already went after Adam Schefter about his about some of his cherry pick stats, but that's a conversation for another time. So
I'm an observer for this game, but if you had to, if you're pushing me for a vote, I would say I'm Chiefs on Sunday.
Yes. All right. Stack the 3P. Good vibes right there. Well,
Yep.
David, thank you. It has just been an absolute pleasure getting to know you a bit more. So please tell listeners where they can find out more about you and just what you're working on over at Axos.
Awesome. Look, I'll just reiterate, thank you so much for having me. You are a treat, and I love what you're doing. And so thanks for having me. You can reach out to us on axosclearing.com very simply. You'll find us these days all over LinkedIn as well. I'm certainly there. Reach out. Let's have a conversation.
Sounds good. And be sure to subscribe to the WealthStack podcast on all major podcasting platforms and follow all things WealthStack on wealthmanagement.com, LinkedIn and Twitter, or X, whatever you still call it these days. And if you want the in-person WealthStack experience, be sure to join me June 10th through 12th at the Boca Raton Resort in Florida for Wealth Management Edge. Thank you all for tuning in.